Hi, I'm Terry Murphy, Senior Editor for Realty Times Women in Business, Women in Real Estate, and I'm also the founder of the Women's Wisdom Network. And one of our special segments is In the Men's Room with Murph, and I have double celebrities today, good friends and exceptional individuals. Art Swiatkowski, or Ski, because that's a whole lot easier than saying his name, as we like to call him. He's a coach, he's a consultant, he's a speaker, he's a thought leader. And he's the new author of he's the co-author of a new book done with Jim Donovan called Create the Change You Want to See. Ski you've studied self-improvement, personal improvement, thought leadership for years and years and years. I'm so glad to have you with us. Say hello.
Thanks, Terry. I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm so glad we get to do this together. We've been friends a long time, so to be able to actually be part of what you're doing is exciting for me.
Well, it's exciting for us because we're all about women helping women, and in general, people helping people because of the resources. And I want to introduce your co-author, who's extremely accomplished, Jim Donovan. He's a native New Yorker. I'm sure he'll tell you that, and a veteran. Thank you for your service. He has walked the talk of implementing these timeless principles that are featured in this book. And when he turned his own life around, he helps others for over 25 years. He's a best-selling author. Published in 26 countries. Bless your heart, as we say in the South. Like Ski, he's a motivational speaker, helping people to transform their success with simple techniques that he has shared in his books and his presentations. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Terry.
You're way up there in Pennsylvania. And where are you, Ski?
I'm right nearby where he is in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, you guys have winter already. Bless your heart.
Almost.
Yeah. Well, I know that writing a book by yourself is already a huge project, let alone co-author, which requires a real high level of collaboration and discipline. Now, I know Ski, and I know you're strong and extremely passionate and professional, and working together must have taken some special planning and aligning of visions. Let me start with you, Art. What was your why when you created this book? I mean, I know you've had a book in you forever, but you had to have a why that finally made it come into realization.
Yeah, Terry, you're right. I did have a book in me forever. And I think it really started a long time ago, probably even when I was playing college football. And after that, I was always interested in what made me tick, what made me want to continue to strive to do things and how I could do them better, how I could achieve more. And then as I got into my late 20s, I discovered Dr. Norman Vincent Peale and some other authors. And that coincided with my movement into sales and sales management. So not only was I studying these things, but I had a laboratory as I looked at it to learn more about myself and people. And then I started to understand the connection between our thoughts and what happens in our lives, that kind of human psyche, metaphysics connection. But again, as I saw that, I started to realize what my purpose was. And that was that I'm here to be able to help people discover and tap into their potential, to make an impact on people. That's clearly why I'm here. So that was the why for the book. Maybe I'll let Jim tell a little bit how the book came about. So.
Well, there certainly was an inspiration to make this book work. And Jim, you contribute heavily to the voice of this book. Tell us your why for doing this book.
Well, I wanted to do another book. This conversation, or this book actually started probably 20 years ago when Ski and I started meeting on a weekly basis. I was thinking about a book about beliefs because I'm very passionate about that. It's the one thing that will stop you dead in your tracks if you don't have the right belief systems going. If there are things getting in your way, or if you don't have the things you need to believe. And I talked about that with him in our weekly meetings. We go back and forth. And then one day he said, "Hey, how about we co-write a book?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's great. For one thing, it's a lot less work for me. I don't have to write the whole book. Let's write some of the book." And it made sense because we've been having these conversations for a very long time. We're very coming from different backgrounds, we're very similar in how we apply the information. I mean, my life was in the toilet. You read any of my books, I was down there in the streets. And the information I write about turned my life around. So that's why I'm very passionate about it, because this is not a theory. I walk this talk and have been for now 34 years. So it was an opportunity, and I thought it'd be great to write, because he's a very good friend of mine, to write a book with a friend.
And someone whose visions and core values align with yours. You and I both know that we can tell people what to do all day long, but when you've actually walked it, you have a different perspective. There's a different authenticity and transparency to it. So I'm very grateful that you were able to connect in this time, in this space, with someone else who has shared that with you. So there are many books on change, and you know that. So can you tell me why you think this book should be so different from others, and why someone would want to pick it up and read it?
Sure, sure. Terry, I think there's a lot of books out there that are written about change, and they're about dealing with change as it's occurring or as it's happened. So somebody going through divorce or bankruptcy or losing a job, and they're talking about change that has happened. We took a different approach. We said, look, change is always going to be part of life. No matter how you slice it, it's always going to be there. So why not take the approach that I'm going to choose change and what I want to see happen in my life? Why not be the creator of change in your life? So that was our approach to that. Also, what made it different, I think, is we don't merely make suggestions about ideas for change. We actually put in ways to learn and execute. So we have exercises and action steps. And hopefully people, the readers, utilize these things to become active participants in the book, not just a reader.
Well, we know that change is inevitable. I mean, it's an ever-changing variable, to quote Don Hudson. That point says, though, that takes a constant flexibility, adaptability, and whatever. So you're saying that these action steps and these exercises help you actually implement change, as opposed to try to figure out how to fit into change. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So Jim, when you did this book, and what would you expect somebody to discover? If I read the book, what would I expect to be my expectation when I'm done reading it?
Well, I'm coming with the assumption that there's something in your life that you want to change, something you're not thrilled with. Everybody wants something different, something more. Typically, it's a natural occurrence. Our entire universe is on expansion. So there's some part of my life that I want to tweak up. Me personally, right now, is my health. I'm having all kinds of health challenges, so I start putting a lot of energy back there. Everybody's trying to achieve something. Now the problem becomes that the majority of people, and like I said, I've been doing this a long time, have no idea of the power that they have to change what's going on in their life. They walk out the door every morning and they just deal with whatever is coming at them. There are better ways. There are ways you can get a little bit ahead of that curve, as you know, and as ski knows. And a lot of people have a sense of that. The thing we wanted to provide was a way to do it. You know, people have, yes, I know I could make my life better, and boy, that would be great, but I haven't a clue how to do it. And there's a whole group of people in that place. They haven't yet. I didn't discover any of this till I was 40 years old. My first book came out when I was 50. I mean, I'm just going, I'm working the long game here, hopefully for some more time.
Well, you're talking about giving people the power to understand, first, the awareness. Would you agree, Ski, that they can change, that they do create their reality? I think I'd like an example. If I was listening to this, give me an example of something that we do by default, when in fact we could do by design.
Ooh, good question.
I think something that we do by default, there's so many things that are, and this is where some of the principles in the book come into play, that we have done so long, that come from misguided or limiting beliefs that form into habits. And I would say, you know, people that smoke, people that overeat, and things of that nature, do they really want to do that? Probably not. But they've already gotten into that groove. They've already gotten they have those beliefs that they can't get out of it. They have the habits that they've formed, and it makes it extremely difficult then in those situations.
Well, I study books, by the way, Jim, being an author myself. So I listen to a book first, I read it, and then I study it. And one of the things that I would hope that our readers would understand is that change, transformation happens from beliefs, like you talked about, and expectations. And so many times our beliefs are self-limiting because somebody told us that we were too short, we were too Italian, we were too this, we were too that. So I know that that's one of the biggest expectations. But you do talk about how we make decisions with three different types. Who would like to elaborate on that?
I think I'll talk about the decisions. By the way, we kind of broke the book down and whacked things up. This is one of the areas that I took. And here's what it really comes down to. the three decisions that you typically have around change are what you will focus on, focus your attention on. There's those decisions about what things mean, and then decisions about what action you're going to take. And when you break that down, you think about the focus. You've heard the expression, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And maybe the best example of that might be The Greatest Secret by Earl Nightingale. And he said, essentially, and that was, the greatest secret is what you become what you think about. And if all you're putting in your eyes and your ears are negative things, if you're focused on regular television and streaming content and social media, which a lot of it's so negative, what do you think is happening inside your brain? It's like a garden. You're planting, instead of planting broccoli or corn or tomatoes, you're planting poison ivy with the negativity that's going in there. How can you possibly expect to make good decisions when that's what you're planting? And then the meaning, that's another thing. Things happen to us all the time. And if we don't control what things mean, and again, I'm a good one for quotes. Shakespeare, I think, said, "Nothing is either good nor bad, but that our thoughts make it so." And that's very true. If you take the meaning of what's going on right now with the pandemic, you will find that there are good things coming out of the pandemic. This ties into what I said about change. It's going to keep coming at us. And so we've got to we've got to create the meaning that supports us in what we want to achieve. And then the last one are decisions about action. There it is right there. You can do the other two, but until you take action, and the right action, you're still going to be in the same place you were.
Now, Jim, do you have a comment on that before I go into another level of this book, which is that's why I say you have to study it. I mean, some books you read and you go, that was a great book. And then other books, like the kind I have, like they're just destroyed. They're destroyed. They have more stickies than they do at like home at Office Depot. Jim, give us a little comment on that belief system.
Well, on beliefs, it's a complicated subject, as you know. And the one thing that I didn't know for many years and found out probably 10 years ago was the beliefs that were given before the age of 7. So the monks say, "Give us the child, we'll give you back the man." I can form your belief system if I work on you. And that's the problem, is that's what people are getting. They're getting negative belief systems drilled into them. So you start there. Then you get into, what do I need to believe to achieve what I want? I mean, it's great. I don't have any, let's suppose I had no negative programming growing up. That would be rare. I had a lot of it, and I had overcome a lot of it. And a lot of it I didn't even know I had until I started evaluating. Do I believe this as an adult? I believed it as a kid because I had no choice. Now I have a choice. And what are the beliefs that are getting in my way? What are the beliefs that I need to start to develop? Because I will do nothing past what I believe about it. If I don't believe I can succeed in business, I'm done. Might as well just stay home, go get a secure job somewhere and enjoy your life. You're not going any further. But you can change beliefs. And that's the whole, so I wrote 15,000 or so words on it.
Right. Yes. Well, beliefs are everything because that's how we interpret our world, right? And so if you think the world's falling, it's going to fall. And one of the things that I think this contributes to, though, is how many times in this book you use the words think differently. Yeah. And that is habitual. We think, we make assumptions. Talk about that, Ski, a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? Just like beliefs, decisions, and habits, I look at them as they form the engine for the change you want to create. Thinking differently is the fuel. Think of it that way. So, and Einstein said this. He said, "A problem cannot be solved at the same level of thinking at which it was created." Think about that. We have to think differently. So if we've got to be able to challenge ourselves. We need to ask ourselves questions, challenge our old way of thinking. Because if we continue to operate with the same beliefs, the same biases, that's just going to continue to create similar situations that you currently have. That's not going to create change. You've got to shift. That's, as I said, it's the fuel that makes the beliefs, decisions, and habits go.
Any comment on that, Jim?
Well, I just want to say that's a really big deal, because thinking differently is not, it's like, oh, it sounds cool. Yeah, I'll think differently about that. Now go out and try to live it for a day. Get through a day thinking differently. Let me know how you make out. This stuff is so ingrained in us, and habits, our whole belief systems, our whole paradigm that we create or worldview, if you want to use the shrink version, um, that to do that, you really have to stop and say, okay, this is how I typically react to this situation. I want to think differently about it. What would that look like? How do I get on the other side of the table? How do I take the other position? If you're a supporter of one candidate or another, let me hear you debate from the other side. If you can put yourself in that place, you learn all kinds of things about yourself, about everything else around you.
Yeah, the what if I think is important. We like to quote Skeen. I'm a huge fan of Charlie Tremendous Jones. And Charlie says, and he's in all of my programs because I'd like to close it with that signature story. You'll be the same today in 5 years, except for the people you meet and the books that you read. And I think you just made that point when you talked about opening up and what if, and Jim just, debate the other side. One of the things that Congressman Dan Crenshaw said yesterday, said there's trade-offs. There are trade-offs, and you have to understand the values of those trade-offs. So I think when you're talking about reevaluating how we believe and what we believe, we have to open up. We have to be out of judgment and into curiosity. And I think that comes across well here. So the book has, and stories we know are how people learn. People like a story since we're children, right, Jim? So
to check something quick here.
Certainly.
Charlie Jones, don't tell a story. Don't make a point without a story. Don't tell a story without a point.
Amen. Yeah, we know that.
He's one of the most amazing people I ever met. I spent time with Charlie one time.
I'm sorry?
I spent an evening with Charlie Jones at his house one night. That was one of the experiences of my life.
Yeah, he's
amazing man.
His daughter's just written a book too called Spark, which is just tremendous. Sorry, that's a little pun. But Charlie was the star of our bestseller, The 1 Minute Entrepreneur. So we're very close to Charlie, and there's so much of what Charlie said. And like you, he had tragedy early in his life. But we like these stories because they give us context, and then we get to write part of the script on ourselves. Give us one story, Ski, that you think would be so engaging. People would say, I've got to run out and buy this book.
Yeah. I think there's, like you said, there's several really good stories in there, but the one that I'll go to is the story about a guy named Vince Papale. And you'll like this because he's an Italian guy.
I was going to say, he's an Italian guy.
But I think people might recognize his name because there was a movie, the Disney movie called Invincible back in I think 2005 or whatever it came out. And it was about this young guy who at 30 years old made an NFL professional football team at the age of 30 as a rookie with no college background. And it was a great story, obviously made for the movie. There was some things that might have been left out. But one of the things was that Vince and I were teammates on a semi-pro team prior to him getting on the Eagles. And that's where I got to meet him and got to know him. And I got to watch his path very closely. So I could see how in Vince's story, this guy from Delaware County, suburban Philadelphia, Eagles fan all his life, man, he had this vision of somehow making the Eagles. But he only had 1 year of high school football, was a track star at St. Joe's, so he didn't play college football. He started playing this touch football, and then he got into this semi-pro league, and he was a stud in this league. But could he make it in the NFL was the question that everybody had. And he kept trying. He kept trying to get tryouts. Nobody would give him a shot. So here comes this guy, Dick Vermeil, who is the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And he says, we're going to have an open tryout. Now, this, I think, was a big publicity stunt because you really aren't looking for anybody and everybody to come in and try out. It was like a zoo. But Vince stood out. I mean, he stood out because, A, he was a great athlete, and they could see his work ethic. So he caught some eyes there, and he got an invitation to go to the Eagles training camp to try out. And that was the beginning of his challenge because, he believed he could do this. Absolutely, there's where his beliefs were. And he was making all the decisions that got him into this position to where he could actually have this opportunity. But he had another challenge because all the coaches and all the players looked at him like, you didn't pay your dues. You didn't go through the internship of college football. So he had to win them over. He had a lot of work there. And he did. Eventually he did. As much resistance as he got, they saw how hard he worked. He saw how smart he was. and he saw his habits. That was another big thing. He formed such great habits in being able to become a great athlete, to become a great football player. And so he ends up making the team. He gets a contract. He ends up as the captain of the special teams, the man of the year for the Eagles because of all his charitable work. And just a really great story where you see all these things come together, we're talking about in the book, in one man's journey to achieve what he wanted to achieve.
It's about beliefs, isn't it, Jim?
Very much so. That's a big driver, for sure.
Well, I got that from Fortitude, the book by Dan Crenshaw, because they told him he would not see. And you know the tenacity that a Navy SEAL has to develop. He would not, he was relentless about seeing. And I have to say, that's the kind of character that comes through when people believe. And if we only could connect our belief to our habits, to our behavior, things would change. And I think that's a great story because it is one of jubilance, it's one of accomplishment. And people, people want to support a hero, especially if they start small. Let's just put it that way. When we write a book, we think of an avatar, the kind of audience that would want to read this book. When you both decided to write this book, who did you have in mind?
I'll start it off. And Ski, you want to?
Yeah, I'll start with this. I'll start.
Okay.
I think when we started off with this book, we talked about this a lot, by the way. And you have this grandiose idea that it's going to appeal to everybody. You want it to appeal to everybody because everybody could benefit from it. But that's not the reality of a book. It's not the reality of most ideas. It has to go to where somebody is going to be receptive to it. So who we were looking for were people had a certain level of awareness that they felt like, you know what, I have something more in me. There's something else I can do. But I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know what my course is going to be. I'm trying different things. It's not happening. And those are the other people. They absolutely believe it and they're working in that direction, but they're not making progress. I think the book is designed for them because it starts to take things apart, as I said earlier, in their beliefs, the decisions they're making in their habits. And when you start taking those apart and start thinking differently again about them, you start to reconstruct a path that you can follow to achieve those things. So again, it's those people who already have at least a slight level of awareness and are willing to go for it.
I think that resonates because there's not a person on the planet you can ask to say, what would you like to change? Because there's something, they want to change something. Everybody, we called it the imposter syndrome. Everybody wants to cover where they're not perfect, but if they could change, what you're saying, Jim, is they have to have the awareness, the belief, and then the behaviors and the habits to make that happen. So would that be an accurate way to kind of summarize the book as a blueprint for how to get to that change if you don't know where to start?
Sure, because you need a map somewhere. I mean, when I was rebuilding my life, I knew I could get my life back. I trashed it all, 10-year downward spiral. I could do hours on that. I've done it already. I knew it could get better. I didn't know what to do next. And Dennis Waitley's audios fell into my lap, literally.
Dennis is a great resource.
Awesome. Psychology of Winning. I still have a set of them on cassette, I think. I'm not sure what. And that started me on a path. And I do want to say quickly that I learned this from Dexter Yeager, that if you make a habit of reading on a regular basis, reading self-help on a daily basis, read 10 pages, 15 minutes, whatever you've got, or listen to it. You make that a habit, I will sit here, I promise you, because I'm sitting here now. My recovery started 34 years ago. My life has been different because I developed that habit back there 30 years ago, somewhere in that.
The compound effect.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not my book or your book or his book or her, but read. Just keep doing it. You'll eventually read all of us. I've read about 600 books by now.
Yeah, that's the collective intellect. Don't you agree, Art? I mean, everybody gets to see through the vortex of their own eye and experience and age and demographic and gender. I mean, we bring this magnificent, unique piece to the puzzle. And we've got all this available, and never have books been easier. I mean, people are giving away ebooks. There's YouTube. Dennis and I did programs years ago, and he was probably the would you say the genteel, the man that showed us gently that we could change through thinking about it differently as opposed to working harder?
I would
Absolutely.
say so, yeah.
I think he was certainly one of the people that influenced me in that list of long list of people who I read. And again, that whole idea, that's what kind of got Jim and I together. We had a common belief. And we also, the funny thing was, the way we came together was interesting because I was actually promoting Wayne Dyer to speak. We were doing promotional stuff in Philadelphia and Allentown. And so we're getting ready to have him come in. We had the event, and this guy comes up and introduces himself. He says, "Hey, I'm Jim Donovan. You know, I've authored several books. I'd like to get together with you after these Wayne Dyer events." And I said, "Oh, sure." So we got together, and that was almost 25 years ago, where we've met almost every single Saturday. Sometimes we do it on a different day, but almost weekly since that time. And again, that was kind of the seed in there for the book, because eventually, as we started talking about doing the book, we ran into a lot of things that, I say, struggles. And he's written several, but by himself. I'd never written one until this one. So trying to get all that together was difficult. But he brought up a good point that sometimes things happen for a reason. And right now, with everything going on in the world, certainly in the United States, people are experiencing a lot of change. They need to learn that they can take more control of this, that they're not all victims, that we need to be able to see things differently, right? Think differently, and to use our beliefs, create better beliefs that support us, make the right decisions, and form the right habits. I know we're being redundant with this, but that's what the key is. And when you start to see that, this book is coming at the right time. It's coming at a very appropriate time to hopefully help a lot of people.
It's all about that collective intellect, the timing, the universe putting people together. You always wonder, why this particular connection? And then it shows up sometimes soon, sometimes years later, doesn't it, Jim?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Sure.
It's a resource. We're sharing resources. We're sharing things that have been empowered us, given us different ways to look at things, put that through our own experiences, and then put it out there in a brand new flavor, in a new way. I know people are going to want this book. Change is hard, especially if you happen to be over 20 or 30 or even 15. I mean, things are, like Jim says, you feel, you set up those core values when you're a kid. So you believe certain things that your parents did and what's right, until you get out into the world, make your own decisions. Tell us, where can we get a copy?
Right now, the best place is Amazon.com. Just search "Create the Change You Want to See." It'll come right up. It'll pop right up. We're still working on some of the other back end resources and whatnot.
And I'm sure there's an opportunity for people who want you to speak with them, present virtually, do some consulting. What would you tell us is the best way to contact you?
Okay. One other thing, let me punctuate the book. By the way, where you can get it right now, we're trying to help other people that are struggling in this period right now. So we're actually making the digital book available at 99 cents in Amazon. So again, as Jim said, if you go just to Amazon search and type in "Create the Change You Want to See," but through the end of the year, we're donating all the profits of the book to Feeding America. And because there are a number of people, because of what's going on, that are struggling, we want to see what we can do to create change for them first, but also the book that you get, it will hopefully create change for you. To answer your question, for me, and I'll let Jim talk, but for me, the best way to reach me for any opportunities to speak or to present or consulting or coaching would be SKI, S-K-I, at radicalperformance.net.
Just repeat that one more time.
Sure, one more time. It's SKI, S-K-I, at radicalperformance.net.
Perfect. And Jim, what would be the best way to reach you?
My website is the best way, and that branches into everything else. It's the website is jimdonovan.com, JIMDONOVAN.com. Good Italian name.
So we know that we all help each other. And the fact that you are helping with a higher purpose of your book, is admirable, and it speaks to your character about change, and not just talking about how to do it or what to do, but to be it. And so I want to thank you personally for being contributors to Realty Times, Women in Business, Women in Real Estate, and In the Men's Room. I'm Terry Murphy. I hope you'll join us again for another segment of In the Men's Room. Coming up, we want more about change.